Hello, written by Murphy here, and I'm continuing with the Immigrant's Guide to American Literature. Today, I want to talk about The Last of the Mohicans. This book is a masterpiece. I just finished reading it, and it was a slog, but it was so worth it. There is so much going on with this book. There's two parts of the book I want to talk about. I want to talk about the book itself, what's in the book, and I want to talk about the historical place that this book holds in history, in literature, and for America. So let's start talking about what this book is about. It's about a particular battle that happened in 1757. So before the American Revolution. This was the French and Indian War. In Europe, it was known as the 7 Years' War. And the book was written in 1826. So James Fenimore Cooper was a fully American writer, and he wrote about America. So this was a battle book. It's historical fiction, talking about the setting of the battle and the characters set in this place in northern New England. I don't know if it was New York, but somewhere like around there. And it's a thrilling story. There's a lot happening. There is so much tension in the book. There are two daughters trying to get back to their father's military post. He's the leader of that military post, and they need to get back there. They're being escorted to return to their dad, and they are being pursued by enemies. There's more than one Native American tribe that are fighting. There are some people on the side of the daughters and some that they're fighting against them. There's the French people, the British, soon to be American people, and they're all fighting. So there's a lot of tension, a lot of different players. The characters are fascinating. They're interesting. They have different motivations. All of these things add to a beautiful book. So much is happening in this book. There's romance. There's rescue. There's multiculturalism, which I talked about, what's going on with these different countries and cultures coming together. And the big one is it is talking about nature. Nature is a huge part of this book. It's wonderful to have a person who knows this landscape write about it. It's a wonderful time capture because this place in America, this time in America, when New York, when the East Coast, which to me seems massively, densely populated, was new and fresh and kind of terrifying and beautiful, and its own majestic self, the nature of what's happening. So nature is throughout the whole story. He describes the lake, he describes the forest, he describes the animals, and he does it beautifully. So the layers of this book are extraordinary. That's not why it was a slog. It was a slog because they don't talk like we do now. He does not express himself in a way that's friendly and familiar to a modern audience. We might say, she walked down the path. That sentence is never going to happen in Last of the Mohicans. James Fenimore Cooper does not talk that way. I just want to give you an example of a sentence. And this I just picked totally at random. And I honestly don't remember what the part of the story it was. Instead of following the western shore, whither their errand led them, the wary Mohican inclined his course more towards those hills behind which Montcalm was known to have led his enemy into the formidable fortress of Ticonderoga. That's a tough sentence. It's complicated. There's a lot of tension and historical reference and in what the purpose of what the different parties are doing. We're not sure why didn't he go the direction he was supposed to go. What it references, I mean, each of these sentences are jam-packed and very nuanced. So it's hard to rush through. It's hard to rush through, and it's really big. It's really thick. And I mean, this is thick with tiny little texts. I don't know if you can see that. This tiny little text. So let me tell you, it's a long book, but it is a well worth the journey. It's beautiful. It's the sort of book that people can read again and again and again, and just is a world. He is creating an experience that's extremely immersive. You get to know who these people are. You get to be in that landscape, which is a wonderful escape. So it is, and now we're going to shift. I'm talking about the book itself, but I want to talk about its place in history. So we are still at the very early stages of what America is. We can say 1776, we declared our independence, and then we fought a war for a while, and then we had to go like prove it that we were our own country. So 1826, 40 years after America said it was its own country. 40 years, that's it. And he wrote this book. And when this book dropped, on the world, it was undeniably a masterpiece. Everybody lost their minds. This was extraordinary. As I was reading it, I realized, oh, it's not, it reminded me of Sir Walter Scott. So English literature had seen this sort of epic retelling. But I think this one is better than Sir Walter Scott's books. I've only read Ivanhoe, but this one is better than Ivanhoe, I think. It is really nuanced. It is gorgeous. He is bringing you to an extremely immersive experience. And so the fact that an American author was able to blow the world away with a thoroughly American book. This is all of America in this book from the time. So it blew the world away when it showed up. And it continues to be amazing. It continues to blow people away. They have made multiple movies. Americans have made, I don't know the number. I heard 18, that might be the right number. And not all of them were made in America. Some were made in other countries because it's just such an inspiring story. It's such a gripping story. And I cannot talk about this book without also mentioning some things that are glaring to me in his writing. He's writing of his time, right? Definitely. And I love that about it because I get to get a time capsule of what things were like, what nature was like at that time, the different cultures that were conflicted. But the Native American place in history, before I read The Last of the Mohicans, I read Deerslayer by James Fenimore Cooper. And in Deerslayer, it's far more obvious what's going on with James Fenimore Cooper's opinion about Native Americans. It is phenomenally racist. It is so racist. Last of the Mohicans is less blatantly racist. There is a lot of talk about savages, brutes, and who they are. I think that Last of the Mohicans is more nuanced because he does at least admit that there are more than one uniform type of Native American. There was more awareness of that at the time because the Native Americans were not just fighting with the new people. They were fighting with their own. They weren't their own. They were different tribes. They had different cultures, and that was evident in Last of the Mohicans. But there is still a lot of threads of racism and sexism. It's not just his attitude towards the Native Americans. It was also his attitudes towards the different people groups that were involved in the story. The two daughters, spoiler alert, the two daughters, one of them is the daughter of the, I forget, the captain's first wife, the first wife, who was part African. So there was a whole other layer of what this daughter was to the son, to the family, and how she kind of ranked and what type of person she should marry. And the destinies of these daughters were very much tied to their race, because there's a story of the time of what different races, I don't even like to use the word race, but that was how it was expressed and understood at the time. We're all humans, but there was a definite understanding of where they fit in the world, what their place was, and what was supposed to happen to them. And as an author, he had a set of expectations that he was going to meet. He had a narrative he was going to follow. And I find that also a time capsule. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with what he does now, but I'm really glad to see what it was he believed then, because in history, we can't just forget what happened. We're still living it. We're still living the effects of people's understandings from decades, centuries ago. And so this helps me see part of what has led to today. The American history of treating Native Americans is shameful, and there was a full-on genocide that was happening at the time, and it shows up in literature too. But I can't not mention that this is part of what's happening with Last of the Mohicans, because it really threads through the choices that the author makes for the characters and how the different characters inside the book treat one another. He was very, James Fenimore Cooper was very enlightened for his time, but not for our current time. And that is probably as it should be. We should continue on the trajectory of having a greater understanding of all human beings as equal, valid. And we are doing so, so that's good. But it can be kind of shocking to look at how James Fenimore Cooper treats the races. And also, don't forget sexism, okay? Racism is something, but how he treats the women and how they're supposed to be. What's interesting is that the one woman who is supposed to be descended from an African American, or not African American, but African mother from the Caribbean, I think. She is way more forceful than the girl who's purely European white, because she's like kind of off, right? I'm like, really? Come on, guys. Anyway, that's how they were then. Let's hope we're progressing forward into a new understanding of how all human beings can interact with one another. So there's a lot happening. This book is beautiful. It is a wonderful masterpiece of American literature. It's a masterpiece of world literature and should be revered and set on the stage as an excellent, excellent book. And so I definitely recommend it for people interested in American literature, because it's one you just got to see it, because it's talking about what America was. And it's putting in a time capsule on display what people thought and how that spills forward into now too. So this book is gorgeous. What else? Am I remembering everything? I can't recommend it enough. It really should be read by everyone. It's beautiful. Take it slow and go through it. If you've got a long, lazy vacation, it is a beautiful, it's immersive. It's very immersive, and there are some books that are like that. And they're immersive at a slow pace, so you don't feel like you have to rush through it, but there's enough tension in the book that it keeps you wondering what's going to happen next. Oh no, now what are they going to do? Who will save them now? So this is very interesting. It's a beautiful book and deserves attention in American literature. Thank you.